Hello everyone and welcome once more to the as of yet untitled indie series, as we set out with tongue pressed firmly in cheek into the world of TerrorBane. That is, if you get that far. Before we continue, I will state there are technically spoilers ahead, so if you want to experience the game properly, then get on Steam, download the demo, and come on back and see what you missed. And of course, share what you found. Now I do have to note right at the start that if you're playing this on computer as I am, get yourself a controller, it really doesn't work without it. But with that out of the way, TerrorBane is an extremely hard game to classify. Take everything you know about standard gaming and throw it out the window. Instead, think of gamers and every bad habit we develop, and every standardized convention and mechanic that a developer would use, and use these as the founding point to how you should actually engage with the game. For example, watching intro credits. Sure, can do. Sit back and enjoy a nicely presented creation myth providing context for the game world and the general mission of the protagonist, before then setting out to the final battle, and only to have the devs themselves argue with the final boss and kick you right back to mission 1 to experience the game properly. But even with going back to mission 1, you've already missed out on oh so much. While going ahead and playing and falling to an inanimate object, we load up the intro once more in take 2. Well, what do most players do in this situation? We hit skip. We hit skip a lot. We ignore much of the story and focus on the action, and the developer is not scared to tell you off for it. But ignoring the dev's hard work and warnings, we press on and break the intro sequence, only to find ourselves in a rhythm game, and needing to complete this to actually allow the intro parchment to finish scrolling. But in doing so, we not only complete the intro, we also find that we have unlocked new areas on our features list, and in doing so, the curtain shall be lifted. But herein lies the real game. The feature list turned bug list is the actual goal you'll be working towards. Each area in the game is rife with bugs, and every one of these bugs will need to be discovered, with each run leading to different conclusions, and different areas based on what bugs you discover and choices you make each time. And though, yes, I did say run, don't let that confuse you. This is not a roguelike. Sure, you'll be restarting sections, and death is definitely not the end, but the game, or reinterpretation of one, plays to its own rules, and no convention of genre will bind this one down. Hell, even when battling your first opponent of the game, real opponent that is, you are able to use attacks, abilities, and the game will even show you the moves and effects of your party, knowing damn well that only paper beats rock. And this is a great example of how much of the game will actually appear to be more of a puzzle, and the game does well to ensure that these fourth wall, meta parodying style of gameplay still gives you enough tutorialization, enough consideration to actually complete them while feeling pretty smart about yourself, as well as giving you a bit of a slap in the face moment when you realize what the actual answer is. Thankfully, without it taking the mick, and doing so in that beautiful way where you're laughing with the game and not just ticked off. And since the game doesn't punish you for your exploration, you never feel like you've missed anything or cut yourself off from other endings and potentials you won't be able to go back to without completely restarting the entire game, consequences be damned, the ability to drop in and out of sections is one of the best aspects of what makes this game so good. All the burden of potentially missing something and having to go back and start again is completely removed, and instead you simply start each small section, searching everywhere and interacting with everything in a hope to finally hit 100%. Going back to our intro, if you don't watch the whole thing, you'll miss the final boss, but at the same time, if you don't try to skip, you won't damage the intro scroll, and if you don't ignore the dev's warning, you'll never break it. Each of these options provides its own rewards, and knowing you can always jump out and back into the start of the sequence, it means that as you're playing, you really don't mind that you're cutting yourself off from some other potential options and can just sit back and enjoy whatever madness you've gotten yourself into. And since the feature list outright tells you how many bugs there are, you get a handy little checklist for the fact that you do need to go back there and try something new, without going so far as to throw it in your face what you need to do. It's a genius move to get the player to quickly switch between sections and try different ideas without giving too much away, and though, yes, providing a bit of a holding hand, it's more just there for support. It's not really dragging you towards any one choice. And this is a system that only works thanks to quite a gradual introduction into what can be done and enough noticeable cues within the game to help identify a bug's presence. All done entirely without having to tell the player, you need to go here and do this. With the standard fantasy RPG game then acting more as a guiding force to how the player goes about that. And hell, even the final boss outright tells you to use abilities on them without ever breaking character, maintaining your immersion in the base game before then completely upending it and reminding you that, oh yeah. And to that extent, I do have to applaud the level of immersion in the game, or meta game, I guess. Let's call it the bug exploration game and the RPG game, to keep them nice and separate. And in loading up the game, we can see a great example of this with small glitches coming in, any changes in how things look, making it easier to see exactly where a glitch may be, and then getting smashed. So honestly, don't be deceived by this. You're not going into this as an RPG, you're not going to be going around Final Fantasy style, beating enemies, having a fight, and matching your skills to best progress the story. In reality, the game is more of an experience, something you just have to try out and see for yourself, because really, there isn't much else like it. And so as a game, it actually makes this extremely hard to review, as, to be honest with you, I'm not really sure I've played one. But as an experience, as a form of entertainment, as something you can start up and— why are the words upside down? Though with all that being said, I do kind of wish you could skip a few parts, such as the name, although, have we tried that yet? But to pick on some areas where there could well be improvements, I have to say that the repetition does start to take its toll as you're tracking down those final bugs in an area. A great example of this was when going through the intro screen simply for having to continually write my name rather than just having it automatically load up the name I entered the first time I played. And a few little problems, such as being able to move during an animation where we should be knocked down, yet still being knocked down the pit, and then that not coming up as a bug really does seem like a lost opportunity, as anything that went wrong in the game could easily be flagged up as intended to go wrong. And I do kind of hope that that one makes it in, although barely worthy, it still counts. And yes, I actually am having to get that petty because there isn't really much I can complain about in this. The game itself, as in the RPG fantasy, is pretty generic. It functions, you can, as I've said, use abilities and attacks, though in reality, that's not the real game, so it doesn't really matter. The whole point is just to show up, try new things, see what happens, and see how you can break things, how you can get in the way of the dev, and enjoy the commentary as it goes, making this, bizarrely, one of the best interactive movies I've ever played. So all in, fourth wall meta commentary, subversion of convention, and a satirical parody of gaming lies before you. The game knows it, the dev straight face denies it, and the characters and NPCs overtly acknowledge it. Load up, mess around, interact with anything, try anything, and let's see how your bug hunt goes. But till then, as always, peace out.